Hello, welcome back to the continuing lecture series in investments. This is Dr. Jeff Hong, and this is, I believe, video number 20. We have already pushed it that far. So in our last video, we discussed the effect of return on equity and plowback ratio on growth and PE ratio. I mean, it's basically the extension of or the impact or ramification of PE ratio in an implication of PE ratio in so many ways, and in valuation of the stock, and also in together with the PEG ratio, right? It can be it can serve as a very useful tool in valuation. Now, so in this example, we'll take a look at why PEG ratio of 1 is a signal that the you can take that as a with confidence that it's a sign, it's a signal that it's a solid a P ratio is justified as a solid indicator. Now, so the P ratio of any company that's fairly priced will be equal to its growth rate. And this is what Peter Lynch said. And Peter Lynch is a legendary fund manager in the 80s, back in the 80s. And he beat the market consistently. He beat the market for like, years and years. I mean, he is legendary, like for 10 years he beat you can't beat the market. I mean, in theory, you can beat the market for a short run, but you cannot beat the market for many years, consistently. But Peter Lynch is legendary because he beat the market, for many years. Now, so let's take a look at this example. Assume that risk-free rate is 8%, which is about the value when Peter Lynch was writing this example. And I believe this is the example he was, and the risk premium, market risk premium, was 8%, and that's about the historical average of the market risk premium. And beta, I mean, it's not beta, it's the plowback ratio, right? So a typical value for the plowback ratio in the US. And therefore, using CAPM, right? Using CAPM, right? The required return on a particular stock is on this, for an average company. What is an average company? What average company's beta is equal to 1, right? It should be exactly like the market beta. So then if we calculate the required return for an average company, right, it would be 16%, right? So then Also accepting as reasonable that ROE, return on equity, is also 6%, same as the same as the expected return on the stock. We conclude, right? ROE is now think about it. Return on equity is pretty much the earnings power of the equity, right? It's the return on equity. So that would be most likely the expected return, right? And the expected return and the required return, uh, they are not necessarily always the same, but they are same. They would at equilibrium. This is so hard, right? At equilibrium. And then equilibrium is always like long run steady state. Right? It can happen, theoretically, because equilibrium is always a long run thing and a steady state thing. In the short run, even if uh, uh, there is as a happenstance, right? Just by pure luck or by fluke, even if the market is in equilibrium, I mean, the demand and supply for a particular stock, average stock, is in equilibrium. In the short run, that is really, really, that's not steady state, right? It's really, transitory, fleeting, right? Ephemeral. Um, so if we assume, required return is expected return, and expected return is, most likely people would expect, the market will expect uh, ROI, right? So then, using that, data, using those data points, our growth rate will be, ROI times, plowback ratio. So 16% times 0.4, it will become 6.4. And then let's calculate the P ratio. Uh, So 1 minus, plowback ratio, and K minus G, and it comes to 6.26, which is roughly equivalent to, right? Roughly equivalent to 6.4. And if you take the PG ratio, then it will be um, 1, right? Well, uh, okay. So how, what else can it be? It will have to be 1, right? So, I mean, even without Peter Lynch, I mean, whatever he said, we already knew, right? We already discussed it, and by any, logical reasoning, you can. This is all about logical reasoning. I mean, if you can, deductive reasoning, um, we came to the same conclusion, right? If the PEG ratio is equal to 1, or even, roughly equal to 1, then the stock is fairly priced, right? Exactly valued. And if PEG ratio is less than 1, it's undervalued, and vice versa, right? And so that, confirms, what, and, Peter Lynch only confirms this, uh, logical reasoning that we our conclusion from our own logical reasoning. Now, so if PEG ratio is roughly equal to growth rate under these assumptions, and which is consistent with the rule of thumb, but it's not the case in all circumstances. For example, if yield on treasury, things may change, right? Yield on treasury, right, goes down to in other words, risk-free. Goes down to 3%. Risk-free rate goes down to 3%. Then it would have to change, right? So then market return, together with the market risk premium, it will become 11. You might wonder, originally the formula has beta, right? But we know that beta here is 1 because it's an average company, right? Right? So continuing with the firm with beta of 1, ROE is still about the same as cost of capital or required return. Then the growth rate will become, because it's 11% times, plowback ratio, right? ROE 4.4, while P ratio would be 9.1. Then this is what? PEG will be about 2, and greater than 2, actually. What does this tell you? PEG ratio is even, not just greater than 1, it's even greater than 2. Then it's overvalued, right? In this case, this stock is overvalued. So price earnings and growth rate now diverge, and PEG ratio is 2.1. Nevertheless, the lower than average PEG still is, even though this is greater than 2, if it is lower than average of the industry, right? No, industry average, I should write it like lower than industry average. Lower than industry average, PEG is still widely seen as signaling potential underpricing, right? This would be normally, overvalued, right? But if it is still, lower than industry average, right? Now, the PEG for S&P, right? PEG for S&P over the last 20 years typically has fluctuated within 1 and 1.5, right? Now, you can use that, industry average as, but you can. What about comparing it with S&P? S&P compared to S&P, this PEG ratio is still high, and then then it is overvalued, right? But what is the? It's not really that significantly meaningful, right? It's not that significant. I mean, um, in this case, you can do that because it's an average firm. It's an average firm, right? Because it's an average firm, you can compare it with the S&P 500, PG of S&P 500. But if this is a specific firm in a specific industry, you have to uh, compare it with uh, industry average, right? Industry average PG. However, but this being beta being 1, meaning average firm, average firm, may be compared, can be compared compared. Yeah, so hard to write it like this. With S&P. Oh my God. It's a torture actually to write with the mouse. It's really a torture. Oh, come on. Yeah, well, oh, that looks like ampersand. Okay, S&P 500. Finally. Okay. All right. So let's do this concept check, right? 13.5, 1 and 2. This is a good exercise, not that difficult. Now, ABC stock has expected return on equity of 12% per year, right? Expected. So this is a forecast, right? And expected earnings per share of $2 and expected dividend of $1.50. That means they are all like T plus 1, right? Think about it. When you're expecting it, it's all, you're expecting it, you're forecasting it at time T. And usually, it's one period. Period ahead. So it's T plus 1, usually, right? T plus 1. Everything, to expected at time T, earnings per share at time T plus 1. Right? Expected at time T, dividend at time T plus 1. I simply, when I wrote this, putting in subscripts was such a, it wasn't that, it's not such a big deal, but, annoying, right? So I just, did decided to do away with the subscripts. But that's the correct interpretation. You have to t and t plus 1. So what are its expected growth rate? It's price and P ratio. Of course, that's price at t plus 1. Oh no, just price at time t, because when you have these future earnings, dividends, then you are solving for price at time t. So first of all, expected growth rate. Growth rate is what? Growth rate is ROE times plowback ratio. So we have ROE is given, but plowback ratio isn't given. But how do we know what the plowback ratio is? Isn't plowback ratio yeah. Isn't plowback ratio getting worse? Oh my. Isn't plowback ratio 1 minus dividend payout ratio? 1 minus dividend payout ratio. And do we know the payout ratio? Yes. How? What's dividend? Out of earnings, right? Dividend. How much is out of earnings per share? How much is paid out as dividend? Huh? Out of $2, $1.50 is paid out as dividend for out of $2. That much is paid out as dividends. So that's what? That's 75%, isn't that right? 0.75, right? Come on. Right? Okay, that's dividend payout ratio, right? So then what does that mean? Plowback ratio has to be 0.25, right? Yeah, 0.25, right? Okay, I gave up, oh, the mouse, please, 0.25, right? Plowback ratio have to be 0.25. So this doesn't look that good. So now, so then 12%, right? Return on equity times 0.25 plowback ratio, right? So this is the growth rate, right? Okay. Okay. Times plowback ratio. Okay, I banged the mouse so that the mouse is, sticking, and it's not really. Come on, that's not where it should be. Okay, now then price earnings ratio using uh, this formula, right? Which is 1 minus plowback ratio over, right, K minus, this is G, right? We all know that's G, right? So then 0.75, which is dividend payout ratio over, 0.1 minus, which is given, right? K is given. Then 10.71, that's the, P ratio. And then to find the stock price, then P ratio times earnings per share, right? That would be 10, right? Times $2, which is the earnings per share, expected earnings per share, and then comes to 21. 21 of 42. Okay, so that's an example, and this is your homework. Actually, when I say homework, now I'm not gonna collect it. It's this is 300. You're not like this small one problem for that. No, you do it, right? It's a gentleman's agreement, right? Whether it's for your own sake. I'm not going to uh, this. You don't do this for anybody else. You don't do this for me. You do it for yourself, right? You're doing. You're uh, I mean, if you are in this class, that means you're fourth semester, fourth semester, at least third or fourth semester, so sophomore. And I can tell, if you're like upper sophomore, the attitude is clearly different from first semester freshman, lower freshman, because lower freshmen, they are clueless, and very disrespectful. I mean, not all of them are, but some. They think the world revolves around them. They think world, the world is their. I mean, they are the center of universe, and the universe revolves around them. In other words, they are lacking, completely lacking, right? Um, Completely lacking that objective view. For first semester freshmen, and they think um, as if they are not, as if they are studying for uh, not their own, not for their own sake, but for somebody else's sake, as if they are doing it for professor. No, you're doing, this is your major, and then you are doing this for yourself to hone your, to develop your uh, skills, and to train yourself in the in this career path. I mean, career path sounds like a vocational education. No, for this profession. I mean, if you're going into the field, you're majoring in this, you're going into the field. Uh, of course, in Finance 100, they're not necessarily all, finance majors. So, but anyway, you're not doing it for anybody, but doing it for yourself. So do this problem, and uh, ask, come bring it to the Collaborate session in the next class and um, tell me what you got and whether you got it right or wrong, or we'll talk about that next time, right? And most likely uh, you will get it right, but if you have any questions doing these problems, we'll talk about that in the Collaborate session next time. Okay, and then so this is pretty much a wrap up of there's still more about growth opportunities because growth opportunities are basically all PVGO. This discussion is something we have already, but this is quite interesting discussion. I mean, which effect dominates? It's all about which effect dominates. But we're out of time, so we'll have to. But we had similar discussion here. We had similar discussion here as higher plowback ratio than higher growth rate, and how does it affect the P ratio and price, and but it all depends on how these variables behave, right? If the so I mean, when we have three variables, and if three variables are all moving in their own direction, right? If they are moving all in tandem, it would be it would be easier to predict the outcome. But if there are possibilities, if there are two variables, there are already four possibilities, right? Both variables moving in the same direction, both variables moving in the other uh, uh, same direction, but positive, negative, right? And one variable moving in positive direction, the other variable moving in negative direction, and vice versa, right? The other variable moving in positive, uh, and the other one moving in negative direction. So if there are three variables, what are the possible events? Um, there will be all like 27 possible events. Uh, 3 raised to 3 to the 3 cubed, 3 variables. But this discussion will have to be because it's going to take time. We're going to discuss this in the next video. Okay, so thank you for watching, and stop recording and sign off.